That's why we need to see the non-thank help that. Thank you. So, for those of you who are online, you've been asked a few questions. So I would really appreciate if you guys could get back to me on those questions. So that will help me have a better understanding of what the class is like. So Abiha, Ali beta, Bhakti, Heer, Kamal beta, Marang, Malaika, Saad beta, Malika beta, Yamna beta, you guys have been asked a few questions. So please get back to me on those questions. And if you feel like getting back to me privately, so you can reply me on the private chat. So we're starting off with the class. So now I'm sure most of you would know that the SAT is digital. By that, what we mean is that you're still pretty much required to go to centers, but you now have to take the SAT either on a laptop or a tablet. And of course, we recommend laptop because it's easier to work with. If you do not have your own device, so you can let College Board know 1 month in advance that you'll be needing a device. But it's not a very much recommended option because you're used to using your own laptop. So I would recommend that you carry your own laptop with you. Your SAT beta will now be conducted on 2nd of December 2023 beta. But if you feel like noting this, copying this, kindly copy this beta. Professor? The next thing we should know is we, of course, have 2 sections on the SAT, reading and maths. We don't have essay on the SAT. And reading is going to have 2 modules. Maths also will be having 2 modules. Now, the total number of questions in the reading section will be 54, and you will have a total of 64 minutes for the 2 modules for English, and each of the module will last for 32 minutes. Whereas in maths, we're going to have a total of 44 questions, but for maths, we're going to have a total of 70 minutes. That is 35 minutes for each of the modules. I think my screen is not shared, my bad. So once again, we're going to have 2 modules in the English. So each of the module will last for 32 minutes. And in the maths, once again, we're going to have 2 modules, but the maths module will last for 35 minutes. It's a time test, of course. And in English, we're going to have a total of 54 questions. In each of the sections, we're going to have a total of 27 questions in each of the module for English. Whereas in maths, we're going to have 22 questions in each of the 2 modules beta. Are we clear with that? The next thing you should know is the test, the ACT test now is an adaptive test. By adaptive, what we're trying to say here is your performance on your first module will determine the difficulty level on the second, will determine the difficulty level for the second module. So let's just say if you do pretty well on your first module, so the questions on your second module will be harder. And if for some reason, if you don't do well on your first module, so then the questions on your second module will not be as hard. And that goes for both English and maths better. So the test is adaptive, but it's adaptive section wise or sectionally adaptive. By sectionally adaptive, we mean if you do well, once again, but I'm repeating it to you for you guys. If you do well on your first module, so let's just say if there are 27 questions, let's just say College Board may have this criteria that if somebody gets 25 of these 27 questions right, so then the questions on the second module will be hard. And let's just say College Board may have this criteria that if somebody gets 22 or fewer than 22 questions right on the first module, so then the questions on the second module would be easy. What exactly this number is, that's anybody's guess for now, because College Board has not made this information public. But what we do know for sure for now is that the test is adaptive, because your attempt is going to be the fourth attempt for the digital SAT after March, August, October, and December. Actually, if you were to count the May ones, it's going to be the fifth one. We didn't have the SAT in June this year. We are going to have the SAT in June from next year. So starting from March, May, August, October, the December will be the fifth attempt. So once again, beta, the test is adaptive. Once again, if it's not clear to you, so I'm repeating it for the third time. So your performance on your first module will determine the difficulty level for the second module. And the same goes for maths as well. So if you do pretty well on your first module in your maths, so the questions on your second module will be hard, beta. And not everyone will be getting the same sort of paper, unlike the paper version of the SAT that we had before December 2022, or even before that. Now the test is digital, so everybody will be getting a different paper, beta. Are we clear with that? But if you feel like taking any notes, please do, beta. So, Mikey, beta, do you need a paper? You can borrow one from there. So, beta, this one thing you should know, that the entire English portion is an MCQ based portion. Whereas in maths, 75% of the questions are MCQs. The other 25% are gradings, which is why I said that you guys, it's advisable that you guys carry a laptop and not a tablet, because it's easier to put the answers through a keyboard of a laptop, but if you're tapping it through the screen of a tablet, so that will take more time. So in student produced responses, you're gonna put the answers manually. So let's just say if your answer is 5.4 for a particular question, so you'll have to manually put in that through the keyboard beta. So beta, the next thing you should know is the reading and writing, the maximum score for reading and writing that we have on the SAT is 800. The maximum score we could have for the math section will also be 800, making it a total of 1600. And you will be graded on a scale of 400 to 1600 on the SAT. The least marks you could have there on the SAT would be 400 and not a 0. So the SAT is graded on a scale of 400 to 1600. So let's just say if you were to register for the SAT, and if you go and take the test, and if you do not, if let's just say you're not really absent on the day of the test, but you do not really put in any of the answers there, so even then you'll be getting 400 marks per time. Also, but there are few prerequisites for us to take the SAT. A, we must get ourselves registered with collegeboard.org. So you need to sign up there. You need to put in the relevant details that they're asking for. Also, beta, we must have a valid passport in order to take the SAT, beta. Any other form of identity, be it birth certificates, way form, smart cards, NICs are not allowed. Some of the students usually read the information for the international students, and what they read is that you can even bring your driving license, but that's for US students. For Pakistan, Nepal, and for Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Nepal, you're going to need a valid passport, beta. So if you do not have a passport, get one made. Also, beta, please notice you need the passport on the day of the SAT. You're not supposed to have one on the day of the registration, but you must have one on the day of your SAT, beta. So a lot many kids keep deferring their registration with the college board just because they don't have the passport. So you can pretty much get registered with the college board, and then meanwhile you can get your passport made if you do not have one, or if it's not renewed. Attributed by valid, I mean two things here. A, it must not be expired, of course. B, the name on your passport must exactly match the details that you put there on the college board ID section. So let's just say if your name is Muhammad Ahmed on your passport, which is the same name that you're going to have in any of your NADRA documents. So if you have a smart card, if you have a CNIC, that's how you must have spelled your name there. So if you spell your name like this on your passport, and if you have mistakenly spelled it like this on your college board ID, so they simply won't let you take the SAT, or they would assume that you're possibly cheating and you're a different person. Are you clear? So you need to be very careful. And let's just say if your name is Muhammad Ahmed Warsi for some reason, so it should be the same there on the college board ID as well. There have been a few new centers which are not really strict with this requirement, such as Hybro College, such as PF Keat. But if you happen to go to one of the older centers, such as KGS, Karachi American School, Regent Plaza, they're pretty strict with this requirement if you're taking the SAT in Karachi. Also, if you're not from Karachi and if you're taking the SAT elsewhere, such as Lahore or Islamabad, so same goes there as well, beta. There are few centers which are pretty strict with this requirement. One of my students did not take his passport in December 2022 with him, and whatever center he went to, let him take the SAT. He registered with us for the digital SAT, the March 10th, and in March 2023, it was a different center in Lahore, but again, this time around, they did not let him take the SAT just because he did not carry his passport. He argued that I didn't have my passport in December 2022 either, but of course they didn't listen, and simply his time and money was of course wasted. So just be very careful with this requirement, and which is why I'm talking for 5 minutes about this requirement, because a lot many in my teaching period I've had 10 or 15 of my students who were simply refused and were simply not allowed to take the SAT just because they did not take their passports with them. So better just be careful with this requirement. Actually, score requirements really depend on the type of the university or on the university that you wish to apply to. So if you're gonna go to one of the 8 Ivy Leagues school, the bare minimum SAT score you should have is 1450, but there are very slim chances that you're gonna get in with this score unless you have a very good, excellent rest of your profile. For example, you've had 3, 4 good international internships, you have excellent academic record, and your extracurricular activities, of course, your participation overall, your academic career, your college essays, your social activity, that's what counts as your rest of your profile. But please understand that a very good ST score can't make up for your average profile. So even if you have a 1580, but if you've got a weak overall profile, so a weak overall profile can't make up. Sorry, yeah. So a very good STD score can't make up for a weak profile. Though a very good profile can make up for this sort of STD score, because this is the bare minimum that you could possibly get in. That too, when you have a very good competitive, good profile, better. But usually the acceptances for Ivy Leagues start from 1530 plus in most cases, better. In most cases. Once again, you may see some of the rare cases, you may come across some of the students getting accepted at 1500 or even less than that, but that's rare. Also, for US state universities, the score we need to target would be 1200, but again, that depends on the type of the state university that you're applying to. But most of the good state universities need you to have a 1200. You can get in at 1100 as well. But again, that really depends on what kind of university you're applying to. But most of the good state universities start taking admission from 1200 plus beta. If you're applying to LUMS beta, if you're taking the SAT for LUMS, we're going to need a 1200 to get into LUMS. And this may surprise you, but I'm saying LUMS. I'm not saying one of the most sought after program in LUMS, because for that, you're going to need a comparative score, something around 1400 plus, 1420 plus. Plus, of course, they have a hidden requirement, an implied requirement that you're supposed to have 5 A's in your O levels. If you, regardless of the score that you have, if you do not really have 5 A's in your O levels, you won't be getting accepted in LUMS. They don't really make this requirement public, but whenever, let's just say, they ever happen to come to your A levels colleges or your intermediate colleges, and if you have a Q&A session with them, so that's when they tell you this. So you need to have 5 A's in your O levels, plus a good comparative score to get into one of their sought after programs. But we have seen students getting acceptances at 1170, 1200 in their programs, such as law, political sciences, management sciences, or which are their relatively newer programs. But if you're applying to one of their older or competitive programs, so you need to look at 1450 plus. Are we clear with that? Ashwita, for IBA, since most of the kids are usually taking the STD for IBA, specifically in the December time. In the August time, we usually have the kids who take the STD for the US universities, but for the December time, most of the kids are usually taking the STD for the IBA time. So, for IBA, we're going to need a 1270 for the BBA program. We're going to need a 1270 for the BS program as well, and that is to meet the interview requirement. You're still required to sit for the interview with this score. However, IBA has 2 sorts of admissions. A, you can get in through the interview, as in you have to sit for the interview. B, you can also get in there directly, that is without the interview, without having to sit for the interview. So for that bit, we need to target a score of 1450 plus. This requirement for the direct admission for IBA is not fixed. It keeps on changing depending upon the supply and demand. But this requirement that we have through the interview route is fixed. So which is why I'm advising for the direct admission, you need to target a score of 1450 plus for the IP beta. Are we clear with that? Also, beta, I'm going to talk about this more here. I just want to make sure that this makes complete sense to you guys. So it says, beta, for the BPO program, we needed 600, 600, and a 1430. So some students who had 600, at least in math, 600 in English, and a total score of 1430 got in, and they got in directly with that. So anybody who had scored less than 1430 had to sit for the interview. So somebody who had a 1270, he or she was as good as somebody who got a 1420 with that. So students who had these scores, they got in, and they got in directly. They didn't have to sit for the interview. But please understand, historically speaking, IBA has had one of the most brutal interviews for the round one. And when until 2015, there used to be only one round, and it used to be held in July or early July or late June. More often than not, it's early July. And from 2015 onwards, we have 2 rounds. And ever since IBA has had 2 rounds, IBA has been very picky in terms of selecting their students in round 1. And which is why their interviews historically have been really difficult to crack. So, and what exactly do I mean by that? So let's just say if there are 2 interviewers, and if one interviewer gives you 9 out of 10, the other one gives you 8 out of 10, which is the finest score, just by the way. So you get it 17 out of 20, just by the way, and which basically translates to 85%. So even though you've scored 85%, you've still failed the interview. How or why? Let's see here. It says that somebody who needs to crack the interview, cleared the interview, he or she needed a total of 87% for the interview. So even for the interview, there's a cut off. So you need to pass the interview as well. So even if you're meeting the cutoff to sit the interview, you still need to pass the interview, and there will be a separate cutoff for the interview as well. So all of these kids that you see with a score of 1280, they cleared the interview. 1410 cleared the interview. 1270 cleared the interview. I need you to pay attention to the second right column, or the third column from the left. So 1310, 1330, 1320, all of these kids cleared the interview. But at the same time, I need you to remember, at the same time, I need you to remember that these kids, it says list of unsuccessful candidates. These kids failed the interview. So students with a score of 1410 could not clear the interview. And this kid, he was pretty close. He only missed it by 7%, but he failed it. 1410, 1380, 1330, 1330, 1350. All of these kids that you see on the screen right now, they failed the interview for some reason. The kid with a 1390, he was pretty close, but again, he failed it by 2% only. And it's been like that in IBS tests since the very beginning, beta. So there were 65 kids who sat for the interview. for the BBA only through the SAT, and they failed it. There were actually more, but I'm talking about the ones who failed it. So 65 kids sat for the interview for the BBA program only and failed it. So the point I'm making here is, but if you're preparing or if you're aiming for, I need you guys to direct the direct. Gets risky at times. Why exactly does that get risky? We just talked about that. And what sort of questions do they usually ask you? So they usually break the ice with a conversation opener that we usually have in all sorts of the interview. So of course they will begin with describe yourself, which is a go-to questions that we usually have. So after describe yourself, they're gonna ask you that why exactly do you wish to apply to the BBA program or whatever program you're applying to. So let's just say you're applying to social sciences, they would be asking you that why exactly do you plan on applying to social sciences? And you'll really have to explain them, and you'll have to do a pretty good job there at explaining them that why exactly you wish to apply to the BS program or the social sciences program or the AC program or whatever program you apply to. Beta. Acha beta. The next thing they're gonna ask you that why exactly are you choosing IB only, or why exactly would you not be choosing LEMS over us, or this university over us? Then they could ask you, okay, what have been your academic strengths? What have been your goals like? What do you plan on doing in your future? Then they could ask you some of the questions that may irk you, that may irritate you. For example, do you play sports? Okay, if you do not play sports, so do you watch any sports? And if you say, let's just say I watch football. Okay, so now the questions that I'm telling you have been the real questions. For example, one of my students was asked, what's your favorite football club? And he replied, Chelsea. So the follow-up question that they had for him was, okay, how has Chelsea's owner made his wealth? So he was supposed to talk about the businesses that the Chelsea's owner has had. Uh, Again, they could ask a similar sort of question. For example, they very frequently ask the students and almost all of the interviews that what's your favorite subject. Now that seems like a very easy question to crack, but the follow-up question is not so easy to deal with. So let's just say if you say, sir, I'm gonna play safe here and I'm gonna tell them it's Urdu. So if you tell them it's Urdu, they're gonna ask you, अच्छा आप फिर हमें मिर्जा गालिब और मीर की पोइट्री का डिफरेंस जरा बताएं क्या है. If you say it's English, this is again a real question that was asked from one of my students. Hey, why has Charles Dickens fantasized so much in his writings? Again, if you say maths, they usually have a piece of paper in front of them. So they would put a question there and they would ask you to solve them right there in front of them. So again, they would ask you questions on politics, economics, international politics, what's happening in a certain country, our relationship with this country, relationship between two countries. If you were PM president, if you were being given a caretaker setup for this, after this government, after the last government, so how would you manage the things, or what would be your priorities? There's so many questions they could potentially ask you with that. So it's advisable that you direct information for IBA. Are we clear with that? If you got any question till here, please do let me know either by unmuting yourself or you could ask the question there on the WhatsApp group chat as well. December return, you should register ASAP. You should register as soon as possible. Beta. Achha, beta, for IBA, particularly, there's another thing that you guys must remember. Since you planned on applying to BBA, and you were hoping you would have enough SAT score to apply or to get in the BBA, but for some reason, let's just say, you get into BS Social Sciences program, or you get in for the interview of BS Social Sciences program. But ever since your O levels or matriculation, you planned on applying to BBA and you had these subjects. Now, this is where it gets risky, because this is where they could ask you, you've had all business subjects. What makes you think? What makes you bring to the social sciences program? That's where you need to really justify that how you're really worthy of getting an admission there. Of course, there's a proper answer for this that we usually rehearse if it comes down to an interview. Not really good at dealing with the follow-up questions. There have been students who have had these subjects and they set for the interview for social sciences, and there are usually so many students and almost every attempt, and they clear it. But again, most of the kids are usually not so good with answering this sort of questions. For example, another type of this question that we usually have is, you've got an A star in physics, you've got an A star in chemistry, you've got an A in maths. So don't you think you're a better candidate for an engineering school and not for a business school? And that's when again you need to justify that why exactly you wish to come to a business school and not want to go to an engineering school with it. And that's pretty common with the IB with that. That's fine. That's fine, but business economics is there. That's fine. That's better. So you guys will be taking, most of you, of course, will be taking the SAT December. For this, we have had already the results already. These kids will be appearing on 7th of October, 5th November, 2nd December. And of course, these kids will be sitting with you. And I need you to understand the competition here, that these candidates, along with these candidates, will be applying for the same seats as yourself. Now, I need you to understand, and I'm sure some of you would know this if you have paid some attention to it, that when it comes to IB beta, most of the kids that we have in Karachi naturally want to apply to IB, and most of the kids from even other cities want to apply to IB beta. Now, for a city like this, where we have 35 million population, there should have been another 40 plus, or at least 30 plus, or 30 universities as big as IBA, but sadly we don't, which is why everybody naturally wants to apply to IBA. Now, why exactly do we not have more business schools? Because actually there's no point in having more business schools. I mean, even if Habib University starts offering a business degree, where do you think those business graduates will be employed? I mean, there are no jobs. Why exactly are there no jobs? I mean, I'm sure you must be aware of the political scenario that we have had over the past many years, which is why the companies that were supposed to expand this year, they're not expanding. The companies that were supposed to add more plants this year are not adding more plants because there's so much uncertainty. So which is why historically, I'm not just talking about these last couple of years, I'm just saying that historically, nobody or not many universities have opened up and started offering BBA schools. There have been second tier, third tier business schools, but most of the good universities, they don't really pick the candidates from those universities. Now, once again, the point I'm making here is, Peter, in accounting, we have a thing, we call it payback period. So, I mean, it's very easy and very convenient for any of the groups, or larger groups, or bigger groups that we have in Karachi to start a business school, but they won't because they consider business schools or business universities as bad investments. IBA is the oldest business school outside North America, is the only business school that was there outside North America continent, and it's been there from 1955. It's I'm sure most of you would know about the legacy that it has had over the years. And now, since IB does know and is aware of the fact that it's one of the most sought after business school in Pakistan, or particularly in Karachi after LIMS, and of course in Pakistan after LIMS, so which is why most of the kids naturally want to apply to IB. And once again, why do we not have more business schools which are on the same scale as IB? I just talked about that because job creation over the past many decades in Pakistan has been very slow. If there were more jobs, if, for example, we were expanding on the same scale as Dubai, of course, there would be 30 more business schools in Karachi that would be as good as IB. But since we have not been expanding, or we have not been progressing the way we should actually as a country over the past many decades, which is why nobody has been able to give a serious competition to IBA over the years, and which is why most of the kids naturally want to apply to IBA. So the point I'm making here is that, of course, there is competition, so which is why we go for the direct admission. So, beta, SAT is not does not stand for standardized aptitude test, which is what some of the kids think. It's basically scholastic aptitude test. And unlike IBA, it's a standardized test. By standardized, what I'm trying to say here is, for IBA, we don't really have a pattern. There could be vocabulary, there may not be vocabulary. There could be poems, there may not be poems. There could be reading comprehensions, there may not be reading comprehension. There could be questions from coordinate geometry. There may not be any questions on coordinate geometry. There may be, I mean, 2, 3, 4 topics could be very dominant there on IB's test. And in the next attempt, you may not see even one question from those topics. So IB does not really like following a particular pattern beta. But SAT, on the other hand, has a particular pattern, and they do know, or of course, they have actually announced that how many questions would be coming from a particular topic. They haven't really given the number of the questions, but they have given a percentage of those questions, which is why it's considered a standardized test. There's another meaning for a standardized that we have. So in A levels, we have percentile. In SAT, we have curves, passing curves. I'm going to talk about that here. So let's just say there are two students, you and your friend, you're taking the SAT in the same center, and you're both sitting next to each other, let's just say. And let's just say you get a score of 48 out of 54 in both modules of reading and writing. Previously, reading and writing used to be a separate section, but on the DSAT, they're one section. So reading and writing questions will be there on one section. So let's just say you get 48 out of 54 in the reading and writing section. If you get 40 out of 44 in the maths section, and both sections of maths and both modules of maths. I'm sorry, I'm so used to saying sections over the years. So let's just say if your SAT was difficult, because you did pretty well in your module 1, which made the algorithm think that you're a good student, which is why your module 2 questions were hard, but you cracked those as well, and you got a score of 48 out of 54. So you got a total of 730, and you took a difficult test. Same goes for maths. You did pretty well on your module 1, and your module 2 was difficult, but you got those questions right as well, and you got a 40 out of 44. So your score here, let's say, I'm just assuming it will be 720. So you got a total of 1450 here. On the other hand, your friend, he or she got the same number of correct in maths, 40 out of 44. But his module 1 questions were easy. He got them right, but they were easy. Or let's just say he got some of these wrong, which is why his module 2 questions were easy, but his total is still 48. His total is 48 out of 54 because he got these questions right. he made mistakes here in his first module, which made the algorithm thing, or which made the software thing, that he may not be as prepared. So, which is why the module 2 questions became even easier, and he got these right. And his total score was also 48 out of 54. Same goes for maths. He got some of these questions wrong here, which made the software think that he may not be well prepared, which is why the module 2 questions became even easier, and he got a total of 40 right here. But since the test was easier than yours, so he will be getting 700 points for the same number of questions over here. You will be given an advantage over there clearly, because you got these questions right on a difficult exam. Are we clear? That's what we mean by adaptive. That's another meaning for the word adaptive. Whereas your friend will be getting only 700 for the same number of questions that he got right. Same goes for maths there, beta. You will be getting 720, whereas your friend will be getting a 690, beta. Are we clear, beta? Because you attempted a difficult question, so of course, college board will be compensating you for getting difficult questions right. So just in case if you've been wondering, sir, मेरा paper तो आसान मुश्किल था, मेरे तो उसका easy था. So will we be grading on the same scale? So no, you won't be graded on the same scale. Let's just say difficult questions carry more weightage, carry more points. Does it clear to you? अच्छा मलिका, मैं इस पे अभी आ रहा हूँ, talking about the scholarship in a bit. This is very pertinent. This has been very relevant always. And now that I run into so many kids who once plan on going abroad, but because of the inflation and because of the conversion rate, they plan on applying to universities in Pakistan. And for IBA, of course, in the Pakistani context, if I were to talk about, if I were to particularly talk about the Pakistani context, it's getting expensive as well. So IBA really won't be refusing you admission based on your financial position. You won't ever run into somebody who did not get into IBA just because you could not afford IBA. So IBA operates in a different way from international universities. Whenever you're filling out the application for international universities, they basically ask you at the time of application whether you'll be needing any sort of scholarships or not. बेटा मैं कमाल इसके बारे में अभी बात करता हूँ. So for the IBA, beta, IBA, so yeah, I was saying that the international universities ask you at the time of admission whether you'll be needing any sort of scholarships or not. But IB and LIMS, they do not really ask you that at the time of the admission. They do that once you have gotten the admission. So once you've gotten the admission there, then beta, you'll have to fill out a separate form, and then through that form, beta, you apply for financial aid. There's a proper department for it, beta. And you can apply for the scholarships. In that form, they could ask you some of the very personal questions, such as your father's salary, his tax certificates, how many properties he's had over the years, how many appliances there are in your home, how many dependents there are, and who exactly is the breadwinner, how many dependents are there, which phone do you have. So I've seen some serious and personal questions there, beta. So beta, let's just say if you ever need help with this, so once you've gotten the admission, you can reach me out. I'll keep it confidential and I'll keep it private and let you know how to fill this. Same goes for LIMS, beta. So for LIMS, let's just say we've gotten the admission there. So you won't ever be refused because of your financial position. Kamal, beta, I need you to pay attention here. But many international universities, of course, give you scholarships on the basis of your SAT scores. And this is actually one of the prominent reasons why most of the kids over the years have taken the SAT. Because what I think is you could actually save your parents a lot of money if you get a good SAT score, beta. So technically, all you have to do is put in effort for the next 2.53 months. And of course, I mean, I wish I could assign a monetary value to it, but you could actually save a lot of money. Could be more than a crore rupees. So definitely you will be getting, or you do stand a very good chance of getting good scholarships on the basis of your SAT scores, beta. And it's not just the universities in US, it's actually the US universities that are now operating in Qatar or Abu Dhabi or Dubai. So you stand a good chance of getting a scholarship even there as well, beta. Canadian universities, but on the other hand, do not really require you to take the SAT. So some of the universities may look at the SAT, but there's no requirement. I mean, if you have the SAT, it's fine. You can mention it, but that's not a requirement. Same goes for Australian universities. But Turkish universities, including Sabancı, Balkan, Me Too, they appreciate if you have the SAT. They require the SAT, and many students are getting the scholarships in Turkish universities on the basis of their SAT scores. So, I'm stopping here. Just in case if you've got a question, please do ask. अच्छा बेटे कनाडा के लिए mostly तो what we need is a TOEFL or an IELTS. And TOEFL and IELTS are language proficiency tests. Those are not aptitude tests. So even if you have to immigrate, you're going to need to take TOEFL or IELTS. But again, those are language proficiency tests. Those are not aptitude or skills tests. So of course those are different. And of course, you need to, and for some of the universities, you are going to need particular grades. For example, if you were to talk about UK, so in UK, we need conditional grades. So if you're already in your A2, so of course some of you may have started working on your university applications, or you may start in another month. So if you get the acceptances now, so the acceptances for now in good universities will be conditional. So not only talking about the universities that even take the admissions for the students with 1D and 2E, I'm talking about better schools in UK. But for now, the admissions will be conditional, beta. So for Canada and Australia, but largely we need good results in A levels, of course, if you're applying to good universities or in intermediate, and of course a good TOEFL and IELTS score, beta. G. Malika, I did talk about the scholarship part. It's not only on the score of 1550. Even on 1450, you can get a good scholarship with that. And you would come across people who have a 1550 and they're going to learn that they're paying the fee because they did not really apply for the scholarship. So if you apply for the scholarship, so I mean, of course you can get one, but of course there's a criteria for that. They really can't give a scholarship to everyone. उसके criteria है वो follow करना पड़ता है. Malika, is it clear? Sorry, beta. For this, I'll talk about in a bit, beta. अच्छा बेटा मैं थोड़े सा इसके बारे में बात करूंगा because a lot many students that we come across are sometimes not really counseled. So this essentially is not related to the SAT, but somehow this ties somehow to the SAT. So of course, for most of the kids, the university education is usually the last academic qualification that you put there on your CVs. Because when you go to university, some of you may think at this stage, yes, sir, don't we actually do masters after undergrad? So, but a masters, I mean, like I said, because some of you really would not be clear about it at this stage. So we don't do the masters immediately. We usually gain some work experience of 2 years, 3 years, then we go for the masters. If you go for masters right after your undergrad, you will be overqualified for so many of the jobs that require you to have undergrad. I'll be clear with it. So it's not recommended to go for masters right after your undergrad. Because if you do so, I mean, there's no harm, but technically you will then be overqualified for so many of the jobs that require you to have undergrad, and you will be under experienced for so many of the jobs that require you to have masters, because you went for masters right after your undergrad. You didn't really gain any experience. So which is why I said it's going to be the last academic qualification there on your CV. And you really, of course, won't be mentioning. There would be a time when you stop mentioning your A-level grades on your CV once you gain experience of 10 to 15 years, and nobody would care whether you did intermediate or A-levels at one point. But the university section, the university column, details are always going to be there on your CV, beta. Now, beta, why exactly should any of us really apply to a good university? Because what really happens is most of these universities or better universities, they have had pretty good relationship with the industry. By that, what I'm trying to say here is, once upon a time, or there used to be a time 10, 15 years ago, if you were to purchase Dawn newspaper on any of the Sundays, so it used to be pretty thick, and there used to be a pretty expansive, pretty thorough career section there. All of those jobs migrated to job websites. And now all of those jobs that used to be on the job websites are not there anymore. They first go to the university's career portal. Each of these better universities or good universities each of these universities has a job portal. But just in case you've been asking me question, so I'll be getting back to your questions in a bit, okay? Because this is going to take some time. So each of these universities has a job portal. So what employers first do is they first reach out these universities. They tell them, can you please put or they have the access actually already, so they can actually put the details over there for the jobs, and they can actually access the CV database. So you may end up receiving job calls for the job that you possibly did not even apply for, because they went through your CV, because your CV was, let's say, present in IBA's database or LUMS database. The second degree universities that we have, CBMZL is that we have. Another second degree university could be it's one of the universities in Lahore. I can't really recall the name, but it's another second tier university that is. So, I mean, they are catching up, and they may have this option as well. But the problem is that most of the better employers that we have in Karachi or in Pakistan, because most of the employers have their headquarters in Karachi, so they technically reach out the graduates of IBA and LUMS for their management positions first. Then they go to the second tier school, which we have in Karachi as well, which are CBM and ZMs. So, if you want to stand a good chance of getting a good job, so you should be targeting, if you plan on getting your university education in Pakistan, so you should be targeting these two schools. That too, if you want to go to a business school. Of course, we have good math school here. We've got good engineering schools, but particularly if you business school को target करेंगे, yeah, let's just say even for the CS, of course, IBA is one of the better options that we have. If we talk about CS, so fast, of course, has been there for so many years. It's usually the most sought after options by the CS students. But the only negative point that we have when it comes to fast is they're usually not inculcating the interpersonal skills in you. You may be pretty good with software skills, with the coding skills, but you may not be really good at selling your product to someone. So that's a negative point that FAST has had over the years. Okay, so I was talking about this bit. So most of these jobs have now moved to the job portals of the universities. So what really happens is beta again, like I said, I'm largely talking about the counseling part here. So what usually happens is that most of the organizations have a culture. I mean, each of the family, I mean, I'm sure most of your families or the families that you have would have some sort of cultures, will have some sort of routines predefined, pre-set by our elders. So likewise, with the organizations have cultures as well, and they don't really wish to compromise on those cultures. So historically, most of these organizations, such as Unilever, Procter and Gamble, Reckitt Benckiser, so they have historically hired graduates from these particular universities, which is why they prefer hiring graduates from these universities only, because whenever they hired graduates from other business schools, they had bad experiences. Now, when I talk about IB and LIMS, I do not really have any sort of personal inclination towards IB or LIMS. I mean, you could choose not to go to any of these schools, but again, the why exactly the employers usually prefer students from these schools is because the students from these schools or the students from these universities are usually put through a lot of academic pressure, which is why beta eventually when they graduate and whenever they're given different sort of tasks in their jobs in their respective jobs, they go on to do pretty well. So एक तो ये चीज है कि they have pretty good stress management. B, they do know how to do multitasking. C, they have been put through a lot of pressure, which is why the pressure at the job, which is actually a serious pressure, of course, does not trouble them as it would to somebody who has not been put through the same kind of pressure, beta. And like I said, beta, historically, I mean, this is what we do. I mean, we usually do our groceries from the same place because that's how our mothers like to think. वहाँ पे ये चीज़ अच्छी मिलती है वहीं से लाना के और समय लाना वो बंद भी हो शॉप तो कल दोबारा चले जाना. So which is what the companies or the employers think, but on a different scale, on a larger scale, that they always want to reach out to the great graduates of the same universities because they have hired graduates from the similar universities. Even the graduates from those universities have worked there, have retired, have reached the ages of 60 and 65 and have now retired. So which is why beta, over the years, a lot many employers have had so many good experiences with the graduates of these universities, which is why they always reach out the graduates of these universities first. Because if, let's just say, if they hire somebody and if he or she does not fit in, and if he or she leaves the job after 2 months, 3 months, they'll have to put the ad again, have to take the interviews again, have to train them again. Let's just say have to train them to a different country or a different city for the training. That, of course, they have to make them stay in hotels. They have to hire trainers for them. That's very expensive for, of course, companies. And which is why, beta, most employers are not in a mood or mode to experiment. So, which is why, beta, they always reach out to these universities first, beta. And of course, if you're applying for engineering schools, they're good engineering schools as well, beta. So, but another point that I would like to make here is, okay, let's just say if any of you had 10 A stars in your O levels, so of course you were the boss back then, you were the buyer, you decided which of the schools you will end up in, because some of the schools were giving you 50% scholarships, some of the schools were giving you 100% scholarships. So you went with the one that you liked, you were the buyer, you took the decision. In your professional life, the scenario is a bit reverse. In your professional life, beta, you're the one who's selling something. It's the employer who's the buyer. It's up to you whether he even looks at your CV or your CV gets discarded there in a paper shredder. So there's a lot of competition. So if you really want to stand out the competition, so once again, A, we have to go to one of the better universities. B, we have to do well in those universities as well, which again is the least talked about point. So ending up in IB or LIMS is not enough. You have to do pretty well over there. So IB or LIMS, if we plan on applying to these two universities, are a good stepping stone, but they're not, of course, the destination. So if you go there, you'll have to do pretty well over there. You'll have to have good internships throughout the universities. You'll have to have good teachers, but for that you have to do some work, you have to strive, you have to speak to a lot many people, you have to do a lot of research. You have to have good relationship with the teachers. By relationship, I mean you need to be in their good books. Because usually if your teachers usually get offended in Pakistan for some reason, they they are not very lenient with your marking and your grading. B, you need to have good peers, circles. Again, you need to make sure you're staying there on the dean's list and you're getting a GP of 3.5 because employers are usually going to pay attention. Again, you're joining good societies, have good roles in those societies which are teaching you something. So there's a lot that you need to do once you get into a university with that. But it's a bit too early to talk about at this stage. For now, you need to target getting into a good university with that. But as some of the cover bit, I'll talk about this. I'll have to go back to the previous slide. Possibly you just joined. So we have already talked about this bit. So ZSW beta we can apply there on the basis of the SAT. For heavy we can, CBM we can. I haven't written CBM here, but now you can apply the CBM on the basis of your SAT score. NIS only the business school we can get in. For engineering programs of NIS beta, you'll have to take their own test. That is NET 1, 2, 3, 4. Really depend on the series that you take. So there are 4 attempts for the engineering programs of NIS beta. G Kamal, these are pretty good. If you have 30 of these certificates. Maybe for fast because the BB test, as in the fast test, has physics as well, CS as well. So we can't get in through SCT. You'll have to take their own test. In fact, for most of the engineering universities, you're supposed to take their own test, except for this IBA. For IBA, you can get in through the SCT if you have a score of, let me talk through that slide. So if you have a 670 in both the sections, including the maths, so then only will your test be extended. Actually, 600 for English and 670 for maths, not 670, 670. 600 for English, 670 for maths. So you need to have at least 670 in the maths. For the BBA, you need to have 600 in English, 600 in maths, but your total score should be 1270. I'll show the same the slide here, so just in case if it's not clear, you would know. So for the direct admission bit, we needed 600 in English, 670 in maths, but a 1460 in CS program for IB. For the interview, it's different for basic econ and maths. For the interview, it's 600, 670, and 1270, which is what we just talked about. So if any of you is taking the SAT to get into the CS program, again, you need to be targeting something on the north of 1460, 1470 beta to get in directly. Ashwita, why exactly do we have to go to a good university? Is something I want to talk about. This reason is the same reason that you would have in your mind, but you may interpret this in a different way. But for some of you, this may be a new word, and it's employability. Employability basically means, or the simplified version or the simplified definition for employability would be your ability of getting hired. So if you are from a good university, the chances of getting hired would be much better. You may come across people who have graduated from a particular university and it's been a year and if they haven't yet gotten any job. So if you go to one of the better schools, be it the engineering schools or the med schools or the business schools, of course, your employability would be much greater. So regardless of the discipline that you're targeting, be it engineering, business, medical, or computer sciences, so make sure that you're actually targeting one of the better schools for these. अच्छा बेटा, back to SAT now. There are a couple of myths, beta, that I would like to debunk for you guys. Of course, it's a pretty risky one. It says, beta, we don't have to study for SAT. If you really want to try, you actually try and try not studying for it, and you would see what school you'll be getting. There's a school here. It's pretty close to where we're taking this class. I'm not going to take the name of the school because we could have kids from the school in our meeting as well. So I'm not taking the name of that school but it's an A-level school. It's pretty near from our DHA campus. And the average SAT score for that school is less than 1,000. So when you take the SAT, the average score for your school would also be present on your score sheet. So if you are taking the SAT because of peer pressure, because your parents want you to do it, or because everybody's taking that in intermediate or A2, or because your cousins took it, your elder cousins took it, and they told you, and which is why you want to take it, but somehow you don't really want to study for it, or you're just taking it because all of your friends are taking it. So please do not take the SAT. I recommend you, and I'm really advising you in the first class that you shouldn't be taking the SAT. For this, you have to study beta. Myth number 2 says, sir, I have had a pre-medical background or had a seen O-level maths. So is it even for me? Can I even do it? So beta, for this, my answer over the past many years has been the same. But every year in somewhere around February, January, late November, early December, late December, we have kids who wish to apply to medical schools, but somehow they don't get into their desired medical schools, which is when they decide to go to business school for social sciences, let's just say, for a BBA degree. And all their life they wanted to become doctors, but let's just say when of course when they don't really get into their desired medical school, they decide to go to one of the business schools, which is again IBA Requirements. And again, they do pretty well. They get in, they get good SAT scores, or they clear IBSS, which is even as difficult as SAT or even harder than SAT, and they get in. So all you have to do, or anything that, or the only thing that would be different for you in that particular case would be that you'll have to work in harder. You'll have to put in more hours as compared to somebody who has had maths over the years. So if you have not studied maths in the last 2 years or last 3 years, if you're on a gap year, so that means better that you'll have to put in more hours, but that does not at all mean that you can't do it. And everything that we'll be teaching here will be taught from the basics, because we already take into account the fact that we do have a variety of kids in our class. So all of them are coming from different sorts of academic backgrounds. So we already take that into account. Myth number 3, sir, I've heard that no matter how hard we work for the SAT, we can't get a good score. That's pretty absurd because, of course, like anything, if you work hard for this, you get a good score, beta. So your score will actually be a true representation of how far you have come. Your score may not be an actual representation of the amount of the hard work you put in. Why? Because some of the kids that we have, they usually start from a score of 700. Tomorrow, day after tomorrow, for your batch, we'll be taking a diagnostic test. After that diagnostic test, we'll be sitting one-on-one, as in we'll be sitting and having a meeting one-on-one. It will be only you, and if your parents would like to be in that meeting, so it will be you and your parents and me, and we'll be discussing what exactly your current score is and what exactly your target score is. So we have had students who get a score of 800, but they wish to apply to one of the Ivy League school. So with a score of 800, if you're targeting a 1550, so of course that's a long shot. But again, that really depends on the kind of effort that you're putting in. So it doesn't really matter, what the final score you are getting. I mean, it does matter to a lot, to some extent, and to a lot of extents actually. But what really matters is how far you have come. So at the same time, I need you guys to cut some slack. So if you're only looking at your scores, made up of 1250, beta, your starting score was 700. You have shown an improvement of 550 points. ठीक है, अगर आपका starting score 1000 होता है, and if you were to improve by 550 points, in that case your score would be 1550. So you need to see how far you have come. You don't need to look at your score in isolation and see, sir, ये तो बहुत बड़ा score है, मेरे दोस्त का तो इतना है. Your score, your friend may have a very different starting score. So again, the reason why I'm explaining you this is because a lot many people are expecting just too much of them. They're standing at 600 and they wish to get a 1600. ऐसा नहीं होता है बेटा, ऐसा नहीं है फिर, क्योंकि ये एक अनरियलिस्टिक सा गोल पर टारगेट करे. अच्छा बेटा, we're starting off our course here 18th of September. We'll be getting done with the course in early November or mid of November, and from mid of November till the day of the test, we'll only be focusing on full-length test and discussion. We'll be doing a lot many full-length tests over here because we would like to see how far you've been coming every week. Not every week, it's usually bi-weekly, and at when we near the exam date, so it becomes weekly. But all of your course and queries will be dealt in this period, and from there on it will only be full-length test and discussion related with test. Achha beta, I would like you guys to copy this timeline. It will largely be talking about how to ace SAT, how to get good scores on the SAT. But let's talk about how usually students end up getting bad scores on the SAT. It boils down to your lack of discipline. You got registered for the SAT, you've been taking the classes for the SAT, but you've been taking the classes half-heartedly. You show up here in 50% of the classes, you never do the homework, or you barely finish the homework, or whenever you do, it's 3 weeks late. Whenever you assign a test, you don't really take it seriously. So if you lack the discipline, so there's no way you can get into IBA beta or LUMS, or let's say get a good score on the SAT beta, regardless of the universities that you're targeting. So if you've been targeting one of the international universities that we talked about earlier, even for that beta, of course, you need a good SAT score. But if you lack the discipline, तो फिर मुश्किल है बेटा. Lack of strategy क्या होता है? So lack of discipline is something I would like to talk about a bit more. इसमें we do have a lot many things. Before your attempt, we may not have a lot many events going on, but usually when it comes to IBA, I mean, I have taught kids who have to go to Karachi eat 5 times because they have different bunch of friends and they want to go with each bunch of friends separately. If you have SAT as the least of your priority, I have taught kids who, whenever we asked that why exactly they have not done certain homework, certain assignment, so the reasons have been like, sir, every night I have to go to the dance practice of my cousin's wedding that's going to be in another 6 months. So if you've got priorities like this, beta, तो फिर थोड़ा सा reconsider करो कि आपको क्या करना है. Lack of strategy. I still see people practicing for the DSAT from the old SATs books, and or let's just say if you've been getting low marks on a particular area, you really don't know how to work on that area. So if you lack the strategy, तो भी एक मुश्किल चीज है. Lack of perseverance may not apply to a lot many kids these days, because a lot many kids that I have taught post COVID really don't want to put in a lot of efforts. But it used to be pretty different before COVID. Perseverance वाला part to supply इसलिए नहीं होता because uh, I remember a time back in 2017-18 when even the MBA kids, the girls in my MBA batches, literally used to cry in our classes because it used to be physical classes only back then, just because they could not really get as many marks as they were hoping. I'm talking about MBA girls. Now I don't see any kind of remorse even in the undergrad kids. Back then, of course, the undergrad kids used to cry, but they used to cry because they did not get as many marks as they were hoping. So we used to put the scores there on a whiteboard back then. So अब तो बच्चों को इसमें trouble भी नहीं है. So it's an old slide that you're looking at actually. So perseverance says कि बेटा you need to be consistent. You need to not give up regardless of how good you've been doing. So there would be times when you'll be hitting a plateau where your scores will not be improving anymore, or you work pretty hard for a test, but let's just say you still did not get the kind of score that you really wanted. So at that very moment, but not giving up is what we define as perseverance. So it's basically, falling down and getting back on the saddle is what we define as perseverance. But so consistency, another word for perseverance would be consistency. So you need to be very consistent regardless of the rewards that you're getting. अच्छा बेटा टीचर का एक्सपीरियंस भी ऑफ कोर्स बड़ा वाइटल है. मतलब वी हैव किड्स इन कराची टीचिंग फॉर द एससीटी पीपल हु cleared the SAT last year and they became teacher this year. Again, how relevant practice you're being made to do. ऐसे तो नहीं है आप अगेन ओल्ड एसएटी वाली प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं. ऐसा तो नहीं है कि हम irrelevant practice कर रहे हैं, because we do have a lot of irrelevant SAT material circulating as well. Again, how communicative you are. If there is a communication gap between you and your teacher, so that really affects your score as well, beta. There are a couple of ingredients, beta, that we're going to need. All of us, of course, have come here with a wish. All of us really want to get a good score, but there's no way I could make you get a good score if you lack the attitude. It's going to boil down to these four elements or ingredients. Wish, all of us came here with a wish that we want to get a good SAT score, but if you lack the attitude, there's no way I could work on your aptitude का मतलब है कि आपकी skills. So आपको थोड़ा सा इस पे काम करना होगा. Of course, perseverance भी. So once again, you'll have to take out time for the SAT at home. If you have not been taking out time for the SAT at home, and if you're only taking the classes, and if you're thinking somehow miraculously that's only going to get you the result, तो ऐसा नहीं होगा बेटा. You'll have to put in the hours at home. You'll have to study at home. SAT में पढ़ना पड़ता है. But there's just two broad definitions I would like you to read. Only we'll proceed then. But I need you to copy the class timings. The classes are going to be on Monday to Thursday. So the digital ST is for 2 hours and 14 minutes. You usually get your scores in 2 weeks. It used to be longer before. There's no essay as we talked about before. So there's one myth that I want to talk about, and let's talk about it once and for all, because some of you may have this question in your minds, unless I really talk about this. So it says, but a digital essay is easy. So should I really practice for it? I say it's easy. Let's talk about how exactly this is easy. It's easy because now that the calculator is allowed, and before it was not. So all of these people who are saying that the DSAT is easy, as usually the people who are somehow connected to the previous SAT. Because the people who did not take the previous SAT, or who did not, or who did not know how the previous SAT was like, they really can't say that. They really can't claim that, because in order for anyone to call it easy or easier, they must know that how exactly the last SAT was. So people call it easier because on the last SAT, there was one section where we could not use the calculator, and there was only one section where we could use it. Now we can use the calculator on both the section on the SAT. It's easier because it's shorter, because it's pretty hard and tiring to sit for 3 hours or more than 3 hours, and of course traveling and then sitting there in an examination center. All of that takes time. Now you really don't have to. Now you simply go there at a particular time, you sign in your laptop, you start with that. So it's easier in that way. Now, easier really does not at all mean that on the last SAT you had a potential to get a 1300. On this SAT, you'll be getting a 1500. Because if that happens, College Board, of course, will be losing its credibility, and College Board will then be losing its market share to its competitor, that is ACT. We do have ACT centers that conduct ACT in Karachi, but of course, it's not as popular here. So in US, of you are required by some of the states, or there are laws actually over there which require the high school students to take the SAT. Some of the states require their residents to take the SAT. Some of the states require their residents to take either of the two tests. So ACT has been one of those competitors for the SAT, and only recently ACT had as many students take the ACT that the SAT has. So only recently they have actually caught up and matched the level of the SAT, and SAT of course is aware of it, which is why they've been making very frequent changes, because we had a change in 2016, then we had a change again. So previously SAT did not used to change this frequently. So the point I'm making here is, beta, it isn't like everybody will be getting a score of 1500, because if that happens, university will opt for this test, and College Board, of course, will be losing its market share. तो इसका ये मतलब बिल्कुल भी नहीं है कि आपका टेस्ट एसटी डिजिटल एसटी इतना इजी हो गया कि हर किसी के बहुत अच्छे मार्क्स आ जाएंगे. That does not at all what we mean when we call it easy, beta. So if you had a potential to get 1300 on the last SAT, you have the same potential to get the same marks on this SAT, beta. Are we clear, beta? But there is no SAT on the SAT anymore, so there's no point talking about that. So, beta, let's talk about this in the very first class, so that if somebody even watches the recording of what we're talking about can actually refer to this. So, of course, ever since COVID happened, we've had physical batch. I mean, of course, for 1.5 years, we had only online batches in the lockdown period. And ever since then, we've had hybrid batches. So, beta, if you're a physical student here, so all of your homework and tests are conducted on campus. For tests, now we usually give this option that you can actually take the test at home as well, but homework is submitted here. Uh, Now, of course, I mean, we understand that everything, including the petrol, largely is getting expensive. So we usually give this option that you can actually take the test on campus. But if you're registered as a physical student, you're supposed to take the class here and submit the homework here. Now, a question may pop up in your mind that I'll talk about in a bit. If you're an online student, your homework and tests are conducted online. If you're a hybrid student, you're only allowed 4 allowances, and even most of the universities allow 4 allowances. By that, we mean that you can only take the class online 4 times. Now, why exactly do we have this as a requirement? It's because with the hybrid kids, whenever we have to take the test, we usually find that kid in an online meeting. And that's how we can't really evaluate, because in that case, we'll have to add all of your details in a software and issue you the test digitally. For example, we were hoping that you'd be coming here to take the test or submit your assignment or submit your homework. And just 2 minutes before the class, you text us that said today I'll be taking the class online. So that's actually a little problematic, and that's not how we can actually evaluate that how far you've come. So which is why we allow 4 allowances. Now, if somebody says कि sir मैं online हूँ लेकिन मैं कभी-कभी campus आना चाहता हूँ, so you can come. So there's no harm in that. You can come as many times as you want, but ये आप ही के लिए है. इससे होता ये है कि we can evaluate your performance even better. बेटा. So बेटा, answering the questions first, and then I'll be taking more questions. Malika, beta, I've answered you. Arif, beta, the course will be done. Largely, most of the course will be done by then. Our test ये है कि आप early ले सकते हो. So the course will be done by the November attempt. But we believe we have a November batch as well, so you can join that one, because that will be November focus only. Gina Yamna, beta, for UK medical universities, we're not supposed to take SAT. There's another test for it. I'm not really sure what that test is, because I'm not really sure, because I believe nobody prepares for that test in Pakistan. But I believe there's a test for UK medical universities. I can't recall what that it is. I'll have to Google, but I'll text you like later. Kamal, but I've already answered you. Cover bit I've talked about the score that we need for CS. But a rate, देखो rate weight नहीं होता इसमें. Rate मतलब kids usually rate it, but देखें यार, if you're asking me to rate it, I won't be able to rate them. So I'll talk about it, why exactly I'm not willing to rate them. I have seen CS graduates, or not from any of these universities, making 3 to 5 lakhs working in Karachi, or not from any of these universities, and making 3 to 5 lakhs 2 years after their graduation. 2 years after their graduation. So when it comes to CS, it isn't which university you're from. I mean, it may matter to some extent, but it's what you know. It's how much you already know. Things in the fields of in the subcategories of CS, be it AI, be it cybersecurity, be it big data, or be it in any other, or be it in any of the subfields of CS, are changing so fast that you need to actually target one of those universities that's actually adapting to the changes faster than the rest of the universities, and that's the university you should actually target. Are we clear? So when you're targeting a CS universities, so the things over there are changing very fast. So you should actually ideally be looking for a university that's adapting, that's changing its curriculum faster than the rest of the universities. And even then, you'll have to refer to a lot of YouTube videos and certifications to keep yourself updated. होता क्या है, एक चीज आ गई अब, I'm sure most of you would know what AI is and what ChatGPT is, but is IBA or FAST even teaching about it? Yes, to some extent they are, but but can I become a prompt engineer after doing a CS from IBA? And in case we don't know what prompt engineer is, it's what tells ChatGPT okay, what exactly you have to answer when. So you basically train ChatGPT. So that, and that's something we can't do because IBA is yet to hire a faculty for it. And then IBA has to update its curriculum for it. Same goes for most of the CS universities. So now if you want to get into this, if you want to become a prompt engineer, even despite having a CS degree, you'll have to get a lot of certification. You'll have to watch a lot of YouTube videos. And then only can you get some knowledge there, even though you have a CS degree. So my recommendation to you is go for a university which is adapting to the changes faster than the rest of the universities. B, if you get into a CFC university, regardless of the university, start learning from YouTube as well. Your university may not teach you as much of the Python. In case if you don't know what it is, please Google. Your university may not teach you as much of the Python as your job would require. So you need to make sure that you're learning from YouTube as well. Are we clear? So CS University की कुछ limitation है. They have 48 courses. Then we have AGC, जो कि कहता है कि भाई इस्लामियत भी पढ़ाएं. I mean, there's no harm in learning Islamiyat, of course. लेकिन यूनिवर्सिटी में इस्लामियत कंपल्सरी क्यों पढ़ाएं वो समझ नहीं आता है. We've been learning Islamiyat all our lives. PhD क्यों पढ़ाएं? Water levels, किस river का water level कितना है, किसका कितना है? That's BS. Why do we even have to learn all of that? लेकिन HEC की कुछ requirements हैं. So university has a limitation. They have to teach 48 courses. They have to fit in some of the irrelevant courses there. And they may not be able, and which is the case. There's so many times that they're not able to update their courses so frequently because they don't have the faculty available. So which is why, but you'll have to learn a lot many things from the YouTube. And even if you're going to one of the business schools, you'll have to do the same. Basically, आसान सा तरीका ये है, you need to have a very good active LinkedIn profile and see which skills are there in demand and which skills are there in demand 4 years from now. When you graduate, start learning those skills from YouTube already. And LinkedIn, जितना time Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat पे दे रहे हैं, वो उसमें से majority time LinkedIn को दें, and you would know what you need to learn there. ठीक है बेटा? So बेटा, I'm taking questions now. If you've got any questions, please do ask. अली अरी बेटा, भक्ति हीर कमल बेटा, मारन साथ सैयद बेटा, यमुना बेटा. But if you got no question, just do let me know if you got no question. और फिर मैं कल के बारे में बताऊंगा. बेटा, do you have any question? No, बेटा, we don't have a class on Friday. We have class on Monday to Thursday. Fridays we are off. बेटा, आपको कोई question है? Sumaika, बेटा, do you have any question? Cover बेटा, I think you've asked me. Cover इसमें मैं suggest क्या करूँ? You plan on applying to IBA and LUMS or abroad. So what do you want me to suggest you? अगर आप ऑलरेडी ज़ेबस में CS पढ़ रहे हो तो ये जो बात अभी मैंने कही है, make sure कि you're getting yourself acquainted and make sure you're learning and make sure you're on the same level as an MI and as an MIT or as an Stanford CS graduate. मतलब make sure करो कि आपको उतना stuff आता है, उतनी चीजें आती हैं. I know tons of kids who have moved for jobs after CS. तो आप भी जा सकते हो, कहीं पे भी जा सकते हो, provided that कि you know the work. So I know tons of kids from Habib as well who graduated, who landed good job offers here locally. They worked here for a year or two and then they move abroad for different jobs, for better jobs. आप भी ऐसा कर सकते हो. तो again, for me, ऐसा नहीं है, and that's not how even employers look at it. Go to any of the software house. Do this. If I mean, to end your confusion, there's so many plenty of software house in Karachi. You can, request a visit and you can actually speak to the people over there. You wouldn't find a lot many of the people working there only from these UCs. You would find kids from PFT to their other UCs. But what they did is whatever they were taught, they actually learned it. It's quite possible that you do a CS from FAST, IBA, Habib or Lumps, and yet you say a retired. Are we clear, beta? So there's no guarantee if you do your CS from any of these things you see on the screen, that doesn't at all promise कि आप बहुत अच्छा करोगे life में. Same goes for business schools as well. Even if you go to IBA and lunch, there's no promise that you'll be doing very good in your life. Thank you, beta. Take it. Love. बेटा अगर किसी का कोई और क्वेश्चन लेटर ऑन हो तो आप जरा ग्रुप पे भेज दीजिएगा. ठीक है, थैंक यू बेटा. ठीक है, अल्लाह हाफिज. बेटा अगर कोई क्वेश्चन है तो आप अभी पूछ लें. आई एम इन द मीटिंग. ठीक है बेटा, जैसे किसी भी वाला क्वेश्चन लेटर ऑन तो आप मुझे टेक्स्ट कर दीजिएगा. ठीक है, थैंक यू बेटा. अल्लाह हाफिज.